All right, guys, I'm back with Chris Lagarde. Last episode, we talked about what the Enneagram is and how you can apply it to your business as a business owner. But now we're going to talk about something a little different. I thought it would be cool to go into what does each Enneagram type actually look like at work? Mm-hmm. And in the last episode, we talked a lot about self-awareness and what that can bring to you as a business owner, but even like coworkers, just being self-aware of like what you're seeing in the office space or, at work in the Slack channels, whatever. Like, what does that look like?
Yeah. Ryan, I appreciate you having me back. I mean, as you can tell, if you didn't listen to that last one, go back and listen to it. And maybe share it with some folks at work or personally, if you find some value in it. But, we were talking and I was like, man, it would be really cool to let people know, like, okay, let's go a step further and say, what do each of these types look like at work? Because you might see the value in like, oh, maybe I should use this in my business if this is what I need to understand about the people around me, right? Mm-hmm. And so, let me ask you, before we dive into everything, I'm going to ask you, even though you're interviewing me. Yeah, put you on the spot, man. I can do that because I know you identify as a 3.
Yeah.
What would you say, what you know of a 3 and how that relates to you? What would people want to know about your type? Not you necessarily, but maybe your type at work.
I'm trying to think here.
Yeah.
About the type, not me.
Yeah. But
I said the type is that 3s like to win. Mm-hmm. They are very, would you say competitive? Because I'm like,
definitely
competitive. I don't want to lose.
Right.
Like yes. I want to, and I'm also like, maybe this is a 3 thing, maybe this is a me thing, but I'm very goal oriented, task oriented. Yep. Okay. Yep. Yeah. I love to-do lists, mm-hmm. And being organized in that way and structure in that way is huge. What
is like, don't do this? What would one of those things be? Like for me, I know, especially relating to a 3, don't avoid this. Just don't do this with me.
Oh man. As a 3 and a content creator, like what I create, I want it to be the best. Mm-hmm. And so like, don't make me look bad.
Heck yeah.
That is, that's a vulnerable moment there for me, but it's the truth.
There you go. There you go. Well, and I think, the people that are around you, like, man, if you hired somebody that did that constantly, that's not a match. Doesn't make them a bad person. Like if they're making you look bad, whatever that is, it's like, okay, that's just, maybe they're just attention to detail isn't there, or their level of excellence is just not developed yet, or whatever. It's just like, hey, it's not a fit, man. I got to have people that, will honor this desire that I bring to my business of being the best and like looking, as far as the content we put out, looking great.
Yeah. I actually ran into that problem. I've been experimenting with different virtual assistants and trying to hire people. And, on the video editing side, it's fantastic, but the social media management side where it's like, or graphic design side, I can get very, very picky. Yeah. And so it's hard to find some help in that area. Cause the way things look is very important to me.
Now, I know we've had conversations about this. Do you remember what I am?
You a 5?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Yes.
Because we didn't mention that last time. I purposefully did not share what I was because,
really? Okay.
Because, actually something that would be kind of fun, depending on how you edit this, but like, go back and be like, hey, I didn't share what I was last time. Go back and listen and take a guess. If you can, because when I teach, there's a class I teach that's kind of an introduction. It's a 90-minute to 2-hour class, and I don't tell them what I am either. And I'm like, look, we'll make a game out of this. Like at the end of this, see if you can guess what I am. Oh, which after 90 minutes, like that's kind of hard. Yeah. To be honest, but especially if they don't know the Enneagram very well. But it's fun, makes it kind of fun. But so I'm a 5. Now, one thing we didn't talk about last time, I want to touch on because this is important, is subtypes. Right? We talked about wings, and I definitely, the wing that influences me more than the other is the 4. Mm-hmm. I went to art school. And I actually think before I'd solidified my core type, I think I may have been leaning towards a 4, but there were some things that happened earlier in my life that I think kind of lead me towards a 5 to kind of land there. But because I went to art school as a web designer before I got into real estate. And so, but subtypes. So there's 3 subtypes, right? And this is going to be applicable to what we're talking about. There's a self-preservation, which is just like it sounds. They're concerned with safety and like making sure everything's good personally. Then there's the one-to-one, who are, really focused on intimate relationships. Like instead of internally focused, like the self-preservation would be, it's more like they're looking for that special person in a way, if that makes sense. And so then the last one is social. The last subtype is like, hey, they're about the good of the group and going with the herd and being accepted by the herd.
Interesting.
Every one of the 9 types has one of those subtypes, and it plays out very differently. And usually one of those subtypes, and it's different for each of the 9, it's called a counter type, because you wouldn't, like, you might know the Enneagram well, but if they're a certain type and subtype, you would be like, they're not that, because it just seems counterproductive. So I actually happen to be, I'm the one-to-one type. So I'm 5, I'm a subtype, one-to-one subtype 5. And what that means for me is like, instead of being more internal and self-preservation, which would like a lot of people experience me, like, especially in this setting, as outgoing. And that's my 7 line, which we're not going to get into today, but they experience me more as like a 7, outgoing, spontaneous, fun, and they're surprised to understand, like, oh, you're more introverted. Yeah, definitely.
That's so funny.
Yeah,
I get that all the time too.
Yeah,
people see me on camera and they're like, "You're so natural on camera," but then they see me like in person, or like they're shocked to know that it's so easy for me to sit by myself for days.
Yeah. But so, as that one-to-one, again, it's just, it flavors how I show up, and it makes sense that, like, all my life, I've always looked for like that one person that, like, early on before I met my wife, I was like, I want to get married. I have to get married. Then I needed a mentor. I had to have a mentor, that one mentor. And then my business partner, right? It was like, I latch on to like certain people instead of having a lot of people that I'm involved in. It's like, it's one person. And so, that's just a little bit of an add-on to what we talked about before. That is more of like that it's not for beginners. If you're a beginner with Enneagram, don't worry about subtypes. But if you start to get into it and you get to that level, it's something to look into, and it flavors how your type shows up. So,
So you mentioned that, at least in the last episode, that you prefer subtypes over wings.
Yeah.
How do the 2 differ?
Yeah. So the subtype is more of it's a way of understanding the way your type shows up at a deeper level than just the wings. Again, it's like, how do I put this? Going back to the ice cream analogy. Like you mentioned chocolate chip cookie dough, right? So maybe you're vanilla chocolate chip cookie dough, but like another subtype of the 3 would be chocolate vanilla, or chocolate cookie dough, whatever. Sure. And then the wings add on to it. And so it's more of a deeper understanding of how you show up versus the wings. Like, man, wings can help you understand how to show up and grow. They're a path to growth. And so for me as a 5, I look at a 6 and say, okay, being a little bit more skeptical and, looking at the loyalist aspect of it. And then the 4, like, I can use both of those. And I think it's limiting to say, oh, I'm just a wing 4. No, I mean, there's ways to growth. I can balance the 4 and the 6 out and learn to grow from both of those. Versus like the subtype, it just, again, it's like, it's another layer of like understanding how your motivation shows up. If that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah. Nothing wrong with saying you're a wing, whatever. But I honestly, like, I see assessment results, and sometimes, if somebody is an 8, they're next. Like if you, some of the ones that are available out there when they rank you from like top to bottom as the types, like from first to last, like let's say 8's the top one, and then their next one is that 4. Well, you're not a wing 4, but like maybe that 4 flavors you in some ways, and that's a part of the subtype. That's just kind of limiting in a way to just be like, oh, I'm an 8 wing 7.
Yeah, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, they're not wrong. It's just kind of different.
Yeah,
So,
no, that makes sense.
Yeah.
All right. Cool. Yeah, I didn't mean to like derail the conversation
No.
there. Let's go back into what do these types look like in the workplace?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, so let's start with an 8, right? So 8's just as a reminder, the active controllers, and their motivation is they've got to be strong and in control and avoid weakness, right? So I think to understand their worldview is really important, because if they show up at work, whatever the way they view the world, right? That's the filter that they're going to pass everything through. And so their worldview is that the world is a tough place and it's unjust, where only the strong survive. Good things happen to those who take control, right? So if you're working with someone who usually unconsciously believes that good things happen to those who take control, so they've got to take control, like that's going to flavor everything you do and the way they show up, right? So for 8's at work, you've got to make sure that you are direct and truthful. Right? Don't you dare be like beat around the bush, or kind of give them a half truth, because the moment you lose their trust, it's really hard to get it back. You've got to make sure that you're direct and truthful. The other thing is that because they tend to be unaware of their intense, overwhelming energy, they're unaware of that, and so people will tend to react to them in a certain way. And as a leader, at least, or with coworkers, like you can shut them down. You're intimidating to them, right? So you don't want to, as an 8, if you are an 8, or if you work with an 8, to be aware of that energy is really important. I've worked with multiple 8s, and the moment you're weak with them or you don't stand up to them, they see you as weak and they discount you. Wow. So like, especially if you're leading an 8, you better be like in their face too, because they don't mind that. In fact, I've heard it said before that conflict is an 8's love language, which to me, I hate conflict. I'll be honest. Like that's just not something I shy away from conflict.
Same,
but for them, it's their love language. So like, man, you better learn to speak that well if you're with an 8. So.
Yeah. It's like two bulls butting heads, but they love it.
Right.
Like, it's play to them.
Exactly.
It's crazy.
A couple of other things, they confuse vulnerability with weakness. So just understand, like they might be showing up that way, just as tough and not admitting they're wrong because they see that as weakness. Establish clear and reasonable boundaries with them, right? Because if you don't, they might just, run over you unaware that they're running over you. And the last thing is they tend to make natural leaders. They're great at startups, right? If they need to control things and you're in a small business that's like a startup or is a startup, man, they make great leaders.
Wow. Yeah, my wife's an 8, and I can just like see her in everything you just said.
Yeah. Shall we talk about 9s?
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. They're the adaptive peacemakers. And I am married to a 9 and I work with a 9, so I know them pretty well. Yep. Again, their motivation is I must create harmony and avoid conflict, right? They create comfort and routine. And the worldview is that the world is not a harmonious place where they can fully assert themselves. People need to treat each other with respect. So the big thing about 9s is they avoid conflict and they hate conflict, right? So a 9 and an 8, be careful with that. That can create some really big issues there. They tend to be don't try to control them, right? Don't pressure them to perform or try to control them, because they're going to resist that. You want to work collaboratively with them to help them understand like what needs to be done, because otherwise they may become passive aggressive, right? They may say yes, but they're not. They'll either do it really slowly or not do it at all and not really tell you the truth sometimes, because they don't want to create conflict. They're going to avoid it.
Yeah.
They tend to make amazing counselors and clergy and teachers, public relations. Their superpower is building bridges and peacemaking, right? So if you need somebody in your organization to kind of bring everybody together, I said this last podcast that they're at the top of the circle. Yeah. And they tend to see everybody else's perspective but their own. So if you need somebody to kind of bring everybody together and get consensus, they're amazing at that. I will say that they have 5s and 9s are similar this way, but 9s have the least amount of stamina. Their vice, to a degree, is self-forgetting. Like they tend to try to create so much harmony and avoid conflict so much that they don't even know what they want themselves. And it's sloth, actually, is what they call it. So they start slow and taper off from there. So it's like, man, it takes a lot to get them moving. And so if you have a 9 in the world, help them understand what's really important. Help them prioritize and like lay out what is really important. That's going to help them kind of make sure that they're getting done what needs to get done first.
Got it. That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's like reminding them to take care of themselves in a way. And,
yeah.
But yeah, that's super interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. You really, that's not a bad thing to do actually with 9s, is to help them understand like, hey, you got to make sure that you're taking care of yourself. Oh, and one more thing about them is that they absolutely hate interruptions. They hate work coming home. So they can do it. Anybody can do anything, but at the same time, like if they're in an industry or a job that will invade their private and personal life, that's going to be tough. That's going to be really tough.
Wow. Okay.
So, I'm in real estate and I've seen that, like, it's not good for 9s,
Interesting.
Not good for 9s. Cool. All right. 1s, the strict perfectionist. They must be perfect. They cannot make mistakes, right? That's their motivation, and their worldview is that the world is imperfect. I can work towards improving it and improving myself. I must make the world a better place, right? Those are the 1s. And 1s, they're interesting because...
Did they ever get mixed up with 3s? Because I'm like...
Yeah. Yes.
Because I'm like, yeah, they both hate to fail.
Yes.
And, okay, keep going.
Yes, but their motivation's different. Remember, you don't like to fail. You want to win. And I'm so glad you brought that up. We'll talk about this when we get to 3s in a minute. But 3s will cut corners. 1s will never, ever cut corners. They'll never break a law necessarily or do. Yeah, that's one of the differences. If you want to know, am I a 1 or a 3, it's like, to get something done, will you cut corners? Yes, then you're probably 3. If never, you're probably 1.
Wow. Okay.
So they will do it right, and they'll do it right the first time, right? So that's kind of how that plays out. So, yeah.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Okay. Assignments and tasks are done on time. I worked with a 1 for a while, and it was like, I didn't realize it, but like, I'd kind of say, hey, we should do this. And like, they would do it, even staying up till like 2 a.m. And I'm like, oh, you didn't need to do that. Like, yeah, I wanted to do it. We should do that, but not like that. Like,
yeah.
Like, whoa, pull the reins back here. Like, so, but they will do assignments and tasks on time. They're a constant, never ending improver. Like I said, one of the other terms for a 1 is the improver. So if you have a role that needs somebody to improve systems and processes, they're a great person potentially to do that. Their communication style is teaching. They like, usually when they're talking about stuff, they'll come across as a teacher. And if they're not healthy, it may be preaching, right? There's a preacher, pastor I listen to who's a 1, and, it's just natural for him. He makes fun of himself a lot because he knows he's a 1, but it's kind of fun to listen to him on that.
Got
it. You need to make sure that you remind them to focus on what's right and let them know specifically what they are doing right. Or else they're going to think it's empty praise. Oh, they're just flattering me. No, you really did this specifically really, really well. And I've already alluded this, but their superpower is making things better.
Got it. Man.
Okay.
So would you say that you could use the Enneagram as a hiring tool? Because I'm thinking, like, when I hear that, I'm like, wow, a 1 would be an incredible video editor.
Yeah.
Because they're like so detail-oriented. They will work hard to make it right.
I may change my perspective on this. I would not use it as the yes or no. Okay. There are some assessments that I would use to like if you're hiring an admin, the Kolbe, Kolbe, is a good one. Because usually the admin there's 4 quadrants to that, and there's certain results you want to see. And if they're not that, yeah, you should probably not. But I would lean more on track record than the Enneagram, because again, the Enneagram gets to the core of who you are. And there can be some like icky things that happen when you hire somebody because they are at their core a certain way. Right? Okay. It's a vulnerable tool and should be used cautiously. And I think we tend to throw around personality assessments, super easy, but this one is a little bit more. Now, could you use it when you, once they're hired to understand them better? Yes, absolutely. But I and this may change, but right now I just don't think that it should be used as a yes or a no.
Got it. That's good to know.
Now, if you're on I could see it where maybe if you're like, man, I'm really not sure they've got a great track record, but I'm not sure. Maybe.
Yeah. Got it.
Use cautiously, right?
Yeah. I know. I just always want to make sure that you're putting someone in a space where they will thrive.
Right.
So that to me, that's just like, it just sounds like if they're already like this, they'll thrive in this spot. But maybe not. All right, let's go to the next one.
Yeah. Some people will disagree with me, and that's okay. That's okay.
Yeah.
All right. So the 2 is next to the considerate helper. They must be, they say to themselves, I must be helpful. I must be there for others. Their worldview is that the world depends on them. People depend on them for help. I have worth because I'm liked and needed, and I only deserve to be loved because I'm helping and I'm loving others. Which, right there, it's like, hey, think about that for a second. Like, okay, if you're motivated deeply to help others or you don't have value, that can get, all of these can go off the rails, quickly. But,
sure, yeah.
I can see that, that can create some really big issues. 2s at work, they need lots of people contact. Relationships are really important to 2s, right? If they're not being helpful, there's a problem. So make sure that they have a lot of 2 relationship interaction. Show them care with words of affirmation. Make sure that you're praising them, not flattery, not overly, too much, but make sure that you're using words of affirmation. And then on the flip side, be careful with criticism because they can take it. Just don't give them too much, depending on how healthy they are, could crush them. Right. You want to be very cautious with that. Never, this is so true, never take their kindness for granted. Right. Because if they feel they're being taken advantage of, that can create some serious issues. And if you feel there's a conflict present, here's a good sign. If you have a 2 in your world, they're usually almost always warm, right? Warm and friendly. If all of a sudden they're cold or they're distant or curt,
you messed up.
Something's going on. Either you messed up or there's conflict present. So address it immediately. Do not wait. Be like, hey, something's off.
Yeah.
Something's going on. Would you be willing to share that with me? Right. The other thing is that you got to remind them to exercise self-care. I think you said that about 1s.
Yeah.
2s specifically, make sure that you are watching them to make sure that they are taking care of themselves.
Yeah.
I know that's a downfall of 2s. They will put everybody else's needs ahead of their own. And the truth is like moms do that a lot. Like, now, not all moms are 2s, but I think naturally mothers just are nurturing, and 2s tend to be that way as well, where they will definitely put everybody else's needs ahead of their own and to their detriment. And then, the last thing I'll say is that if you want to know what's going on with people in your organization, ask a 2, because they're going to know, they keep an eye on people, right? They're going to know that, hey, so Susie's dealing with this or whatever. They're going to know that just intrinsically, because they tend to have a good intuitive part of themselves that they can intuit what other people are doing or going through, or people, because of naturally of who they are, will come to them and share things.
Super good to know.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. Next one.
3s.
Yep.
The competitive achievers, right? I must be successful. I must be productive. Their worldview is that the world values winners and must avoid failure at all costs. Naturally, 3s are great salespeople and leaders to a degree. Their superpower, and this is fascinating, is being a chameleon. And what that means is that they can adjust themselves to match the audience they're presenting to, right? So if you need somebody to present or sell something, 3s could be, right? Again, it's not a reason to hire or not hire somebody, but 3s could be. I see a lot of 3s in real estate, which is the sector I'm in. They're really good at that. They're productivity machines. They set and accomplish goals naturally. They're very hardworking. They have a hard time not doing when they're not working. So if you go on vacation with a 3, you're not going to rest. You're probably going to go and go. Their communication style is promotion and sales. When they're not healthy, they will cut corners. We talked about that earlier. Yep. So if they're not healthy, they will take shortcuts, and that can get them in trouble. Always give them a clear path to a promotion, right? We mentioned that earlier. Like if you've got a 3, hey, here are the next 3 steps for you, and here's what you need to do to get there. Otherwise, they may go to somewhere else that promises that to them. And then Yeah. Lastly, help them set clear boundaries about workaholism and avoid burnout.
Got it. Wow. So much of myself I just saw in that. That's crazy.
Yeah. Man. Yeah. And that's the thing about personality assessments and assessments in general. It's like a mirror, right? All of them. I've heard this several times where personality assessments or Enneagrams, they're wrong, but they're useful. Meaning like it's not the capital T truth about you. It's like a small t truth, but they're useful, right?
Yeah.
You shouldn't, again, like you talked about this last time, don't let it put you in a box, right?
Yeah.
And it's like, oh man, I see myself. And now that you know that, oh, my communication style is promotional or sales. That's why I work so well with the social media stuff, because that's my natural communication style.
Yeah. I love what you said though about how like, when the 3 is unhealthy, they'll cut corners. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it's in my head, I'm thinking like, yeah, like big T truth, little T truth, like maybe these qualities aren't always constant, but I find in my life, like, maybe if I do become unhealthy in some areas, I'm like, oh, there's that quality of a 3. I'm like, oh, there's this. Mm-hmm. And it pops up. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I'm sure that's with every type.
Yeah. Yeah. And now that you're aware of it, it's like, okay, well, how do you use that well?
Yeah.
And if it's something that's maybe, again, the cutting corners thing, okay, I'm stressed. Things aren't really going well, and I see I shouldn't do that. I know I need to, and you have people, that's what community's for, is to help you, mitigate that sometimes if you can't do it on your own.
Yeah.
So, all right, let's talk about the 4s. All right. They say to themselves, their motivation is, I must be authentic. I must go deep. Compared, and their worldview is compared with others, I sense that something's different in my life, maybe missing. And I need to strive to find that true identity and be authentic, right? Authentic is really the word. Creative's important too, but authenticity is really really important to them, because I have a strong bent towards the 4. Like that, to me, that's my top value, is authenticity. I can feel that a lot. Like I don't wear ties because that's not authentic to me. I hate it. It's like strangling me. So it's like, I've got to be authentic. I had a coach one time mention these earrings, and he's like, so how do you think that makes potential clients feel, like in the real estate space, buyers or sellers? And I'm like, I'm gonna be honest, I don't care. Like if this is going to put them off, then, oh, well, they're not the client for me. You know? So
I love that.
So 4s at work, authenticity is everything to them, right? Don't be phony or superficial. Just shared a story about my past coach doing that. They do tend to procrastinate on mundane tasks like reports or spreadsheets. So maybe don't have them in that role. That might not be a good role for them.
Maybe they need an assistant
to
delegate that.
Yep. So, to feel fulfilled at work, they've got to have a higher purpose, right? If it's making a widget, it's not enough. It's got to be a widget that's going to change the world and make the world a better place, right? So if you've got a 4 in your organization, make sure that you've got a clear vision and purpose, and that it's a big enough higher purpose for them.
Yeah.
So make sure that, they don't like uniformity or too much regulation. So again, if they're, because I've been in the artistic world, graphic web design, like, those people, you can't box them in. You've got to make sure that they can be them. Hair color, dress, whatever, you got to make sure that you let them do that, or else it's just going to be a fight and they're going to leave. And if they're talent for the role you want them in, that's just not what you want to do. And just make sure that you see them and hear them for who they truly are authentically, and that you appreciate that.
Yeah. So if you're a business owner who's trying to hire a creative team to do your marketing, that's going to be a big one.
Yes, it is.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Giving people their individuality and in their work.
Purpose.
Yeah. That's huge. Yeah. I love that.
It's funny. I actually don't think I consciously know a lot of 4s, but just know that 4s, there's a lot of emotions there. Of all of the types on the Enneagram, they're the most emotional. 2s can kind of get that way sometimes, but 4s, like, they're not afraid of emotions. And sometimes they've got big emotions that come out, and they're not afraid to go to sadness, and they're prone to melancholy a lot. And so, there's plenty of stories of artists doing that, right?
Yeah.
So, all right, we ready for 5s?
Yeah, let's hear it.
Yeah, I have a little bit of experience with 5s. They're the quiet specialist. I must understand, and I must conserve my resources. We'll get to that in a minute. The worldview is they invade my privacy, and I believe that I need to protect my resources and energy. So like like nines, where I said they start off slow and taper off from there.
Yeah.
Nines and fives tend to have the least amount of social energy. I know as a five, like I'll, when my wife and I go to her families, she loves it there. She'll talk until 2 a.m.
Yeah.
I am not that. And I'm like, I'm going to take another car because I know you're going to be there late, and I'll leave like well before she leaves. And so I've heard that plenty of times from fives, that if their spouses are something different, they're going to stay longer. They're going to take another car because they run out of energy sooner. So, and that's something to understand with fives at work. It's like they only have a certain amount of relational energy. And so, as a coach, there's days where I'm on calls with my clients from, early in the morning to late in the afternoon. And like, those are draining days for me because while I love it, it's just like, I feel that my reserves, it's like a battery. All fives have a battery and they're watching it go down all day. And it's like, okay, they get nervous when it gets low because they only have so much energy to give out, but they're valued. Like the wisdom is the big thing, that wisdom and objectivity, right? So fives can, when they're healthy, they can work towards being non-attached. Not detached and not attached, but non-attachment. Looking at things from an objective standpoint. So if you have an emotional situation that you need somebody to objectively look at, fives are a great person to go to because they are valued for their cool, clear, and analytical minds. Bill Gates, Stephen Hawking, Jane Goodall are all examples of fives. And you can see how like kind of they show up with that, especially being like pioneers and thinking a little bit differently. They're very calm in a crisis, make great EMT and ER doctors, and they are masters at observation. Right? They can look at, like, this is one of the things I love to bring to the table is I love learning, I love understanding, right?
Yeah.
And going deep on things, and then taking all of that hours and hours and hours of reading and study and listening and bringing it into wisdom that somebody can then use as a coaching client. It's definitely something that I bring to the, I mentioned last time, like my identity as a builder of constructs and a teaching prophet, it lines up really well with that, Yeah. They don't like meetings. So don't ever text a five and say, hey, can we chat? Don't do that. They will not like that. Now, if you text them and say, hey, can we meet? It's on this topic. Here's how much time we need, and here's the agenda. And if there's more than you there, let them know who's going to be there.
That's good to know.
Yeah.
That's very good to know.
They again, it's about their tank and reserving, like, it takes energy. So, let them know the agenda, who's going to be there, and the timing, and they're not very materialistic. So if you're going to, now, doesn't mean you shouldn't reward them with, more money.
Sure.
With an increase in compensation, but autonomy is what they want, right? More autonomy. I realized early in my career, I don't like working for other people, right? Yeah. So there's been times where I've done that, but more often than not, I've worked for myself because I want that autonomy. It's really important to me.
So a five then fives want autonomy, but are they still good with like managing people, or
they can be?
Is it just being in control that they like?
No, it's not control. Okay. It's being competent. That's not something I mentioned on that, but they want to be competent. So for me, when I first became, when I took my coaching to the next level, man, I had a lot of fear around not being competent. And if I'm going to do something, I'm going to learn it and make sure that I'm not going to screw it up. Before I do that. And so, you want to make sure that they, if they're managing people, they need to be on the healthier side, because otherwise, like a five will go, and this is maybe a third episode we can do, but
sure,
fives will go to an 8 when they're stressed, to that control side of things, to kind of release. And I've been told by people in my world that, like, when I'm stressed, it's like, I'm not empathetic. I'm like, get it done. Like, I don't care about them very much. And so if they're not healthy, they might not be great leaders. But like, think about Bill Gates. I mean, I've not heard a lot about his leadership style, but the little I have heard is that it wasn't the best, right? Yeah. So they can tend to, the people skills there, depending, especially we talked about subtypes. If they're self-preservation 5, where they're more inward, they might not be the best manager of people.
Got it. Okay.
That doesn't mean they can't do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, good question.
To know.
Okay. All
right, cool. Yeah, let's go to the next one.
6 is So jumped ahead there. So their motivation, I've got to be vigilant and safe. I must be responsible. And they view the world as a threatening and unsafe place, which drives me to test and question things and people to feel safer. All right. So 6 at work. They love order, consistency, and comfort with clear guidelines, right? It's going to help them. Make sure that you give them clear guidelines of what to do. Once you earn their trust, they're incredibly loyal. They're a natural devil's advocate, low optimism, right? So just understand, if you've got a 6, they're going to ask lots of questions to help everyone, including themselves, see the big picture. And we talked about that earlier. If you don't fully answer their questions, right? If they're asking why or tell me more about that, and you're like, surface answer, they're not going to support you. You've got to earn their support by giving them full answers.
Wow.
And this is interesting. So sometimes they confuse doing or thinking with doing. Oh, how are you doing on that report? Yeah, I'm making progress, but all they've done is think about it. It's like, okay, well, you want to make sure that you help them accountable wise. Okay, what specifically have you done? Like what progress have you made? And I've had 6s in my world, and sometimes I've had to at the end of every day, ask them, what progress did you make? What progress did you make? Not because they're irresponsible. They want to be responsible. It's just that, sometimes they might confuse thinking with doing.
Yeah.
They do tend to take on too much. So help them break down their tasks and prioritize. And then their worst case scenario thinking needs to be managed. Like I said earlier, not discounted. Don't discount their worst case scenario thinking. Now, if they're super unhealthy, maybe, they need some help with that. But if you discount them, they're not going to be loyal and they're going to leave. So
interesting. Wow.
Okay. Any questions about those?
I don't think so.
Okay,
I'm kind of envisioning like a software developer with them diving deeper. I don't know. Maybe I'm totally off here.
No.
But the fact that they want the why answers, it's almost like they like to connect things. Am I off on that? Or?
No.
Okay.
No, I mean, again, it's about, all of the types can do any type of work.
Sure.
But there might be a better bent for them. And they're the 6s, because they want to be safe. I don't know, from a programmer standpoint, I'm not sure. I'll be honest. I'm not sure how well they might do with that or not. But, if they're in a job that, I would say that commission jobs, pure commission, probably are not good for 6s.
Got it.
They're going to need a stable salary, and they're going to need to know that everything's good to go, because otherwise they're always going to think worst case scenario, and it's going to stress them out.
That makes sense. Got it.
All right. We got one more because we started with the 8.
Oh, okay.
7s, the enthusiastic visionaries. Their motivation is, I deserve what I want. I must have freedom. And their worldview is, the world is full of exciting possibilities, ideas, and experiences, and I have to explore as much as possible. So these guys are the ones that avoid pain. My business partner for years is a 7. He identifies as a 7, so I know him well. And he knows this about himself, so he wouldn't mind me saying this. One of the things that drove me nuts is that they tend to they don't stick with something long.
Okay.
Right? They like to jump. That's the whole FOMO thing. They'll jump from one thing to another very quickly.
Yeah.
And it drove me nuts. I'm like, dude, can we just finish something for once?
Yeah.
They're great at startups. I know a few 7s that they've started businesses, multiple businesses, and they leave pretty early on because they've gotten bored and they're on to the next thing. So don't give them responsibilities to manage or execute. They're not great ongoing managers and maintainers, right? Find somebody else to execute the vision. They're dreamers, highly optimistic, initiators, idea generators. They need a lot of flexibility and fast pace in their work environment. Their communication style is storytelling, and they're great public speakers. I'm going to give a shout out to a 7 I know. His name's Jamie Winship. He's got a company called Identity Exchange, and man, I think he's probably the best storyteller I've ever heard.
Really?
Oh yeah. His stories are amazing.
I gotta look this guy up.
Yeah. He's written a book called Living Fearless. He used to work in the Middle East with a government organization, because I'm not sure what we're allowed to say or not say. But and his job was to basically go into the Taliban and change their mind.
Wow.
Yeah, he's an amazing guy. Love him to death. And but he's a 7 and amazing storyteller. However, try to keep him on time.
Nice.
And that's just like sevens. That's, that's typically how some sevens can be. Not all.
I love
some
that.
Sevens. They're great team players. Give healthy sevens a long leash and accountability, right? Just like kind of let them go do the thing, accountability, but if they're healthy, right? If they're not healthy, they tend to jump, again, around a lot, and that's not always a good thing. Mm-hmm. So yeah, those are the 7 types at work. I don't know if there's any questions or observations you have about that. I mean, Ryan, having gone through all 7, it can be a lot of information. I mean,
yeah.
What do you take away from all of that?
It is a lot of information, but like listening to this from not only like a business owner perspective, but I also love, serving at my church and just like being around people, even building teams and stuff. It like that, knowing every type, it helps me identify like, if I have this person on my team, like how I should communicate with them. Mm-hmm. I think you said I forget which type it was, but there was one of the types where you said something and I was like, oh, well, like I have this type in my life. I need to stop communicating to them in this way. Mm-hmm. Or maybe just like shift the way I communicate to them so that they'll thrive when I talk to them this way. Yeah. Or give them a task in this way. So like that's huge.
The IEQ 9, which I know we talked about last time, on the pro report, it gives you how you should be aware of receiving feedback, as well as for each type, how you should give them feedback, which I think is amazing. Cause it's like, I looked up my wife right away and I'm like, how do I give her feedback? And it was helpful. It was really, really good. And again, not everything in assessments like that is going to be true. You just have to evaluate how useful it is for you. But, I think one of the things that I learned when I first started understanding the Enneagram was, again, like, man, this person is a 9 or a 2 or an 8 or a 7, like with my business partner. And it's like, hey, he's naturally not going to finish something. So we need a finisher in this world. And one of the things that business owners and the people that start businesses, the visionaries, whatever type they are, they usually are not great at, executing and putting the systems in place. Yeah. I listen to a lot of podcasts around building businesses and leading businesses, like how I built this and stuff like that. And it's always like, it's never just one person that really makes, when you hear the big successful businesses, it's never one person. Mm-hmm. There's always a couple other people that complement them. And, we need all 9 types in our world, right? Yeah. If your business, whether it's a salesperson or a 6 as a skeptic or a systems person for a 1, like we need those people in our world, and they all bring great things. And, when you know how to get the most out, not get the most out of them, but help them live at the highest level. Yeah. Therefore, you do get the most out of them at work. Man, everybody benefits.
Yeah. I know that's like so eye-opening as like a solopreneur. Yeah. How much maybe you're lacking because you don't have a team to pick up the areas that you suck at. Yeah. So like,
and how freeing is it to know, like, I don't need to be good at this.
Yeah. I can double down on your strengths and like let someone else help you with your weaknesses.
One thing I really just came to accept recently, I've been in real estate for 17 years, and, I just, I've come to the point where I understand and have accepted, like, sales is not something I should be doing. And it's like, oh, really? Like, in our world, it tends to be, oh, that's just the limiting belief. And I can do sales. Like, put me up against any other real estate agent from a scripting or conversation standpoint, and I'll out-script them, no problem. But when it comes to sales, that is not where I should be. And accepting that opens doors to, like, okay, instead of putting my energy into something that it's just not ever going to be amazing, and I can go do what I am going to be amazing at, is so freeing. And so that just comes from self-awareness.
Yeah. I love that. Man, well, do you have any closing thoughts before we...
Listen, again, I'll say this, I think I said it the last time. Everybody's created uniquely. I think of ourselves, we are instruments. Mm-hmm. And if we don't learn to play our instrument at the highest level, everybody else is missing out around you. So go learn your instrument, go learn who you are and how to like show up at the highest level and bless the people around you. That would be my message. So
I love that. And so for anyone who didn't hear the first episode, and the last episode you mentioned like Road Back to You is a great starting point. Yeah. What other starting points are good?
Yeah, Road Back to You is great. If you don't, depending on where you're at financially and can afford it, the IEQ9, I love the Pro report. I get a discount as a practitioner with them. So you're welcome to reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk to you about that. I think we broke it down to like, hey, if you just want to learn more, you can take any one of the free or low cost assessments online. You can get the Road Back to You, listen to the podcast Typology. Both the book and the podcast are by Ian Cron. If you really are interested in this, maybe you know it already and you want to go deeper, reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk to you about what coaching and consulting looks like, either for you personally or for your organization. And I'd be happy to do that. You can find me at Instagram at Lagarde Chris, or just look up Chris Lagarde on Facebook and you'll likely find me.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thanks, Chris.
Ryan. Yeah. Appreciate it, man.